A lot of popular dog advice tells you to follow your heart, but sometimes the heart gives your dog far more power than you realize. We all try to be good caretakers, and we want our dogs to feel safe and loved. But in that kindness, it's easy to let certain habits slide until they become the norm. You don't notice the shift, but your dog absolutely does. And when you see these next signs, you might rethink what balance really looks like. If that kind of honest reflection speaks to you, you're welcome to like the video and stick around for more. Number 1. Constant clinginess and following. Have you ever wondered why your dog seems unable to let you out of their sight, even for a moment? It feels sweet at first, like a sign of deep love. But over time, you start to notice the tension behind it. Your dog watches every step you take, almost as if your absence leaves them unsure of what to do with themselves. And in that constant closeness, there's a quiet pressure building inside them, a fear that grows whenever you're not there to anchor their world. That's why teaching them gentle moments of independence becomes less about pushing them away and more about giving them room to breathe, which would be fine if it didn't lead to this. Number 2, demanding constant affection. Some dogs don't just want affection, they expect it, as if it's their right. At first it feels harmless, especially when they nudge your hand or press their head under your arm with that familiar mix of hope and insistence. But slowly, those small moments turn into a pattern where your dog begins to rely on your constant touch to feel settled, and you find yourself responding without even thinking. And when you pause for just a second, you can feel their frustration rise, as if your stillness is a kind of rejection they can't quite understand. It's in those moments that calm, steady boundaries become a gift, helping your dog learn how to soothe themselves instead of depending on you to do it for them. And once you notice that pattern, you start seeing another one. Number 3, claiming all spaces in the home. It's easy to forget how strange it is that a dog can quietly take over an entire home without anyone really noticing. One day, they're curled at the edge of the couch, and before long, they're sprawled across the whole thing, like it was built just for them. You tell yourself it's fine because they look peaceful, but there's a subtle shift happening beneath that comfort. A sense that certain spaces now belong more to them than to you. And when a dog becomes emotionally attached to those spots, you start to feel the tension in the way they guard them, even if it's just with a stiff body or a silent stare. That's why gentle boundary resetting isn't about taking anything away from them, but about reminding them that shared spaces truly are shared. And honestly, that's the manageable version of the problem. Number 4, sleeping on the owner's pillow. You might think it's adorable when your dog curls up on your pillow, but it's one of those habits that carries more meaning than it seems. At first, it feels like a sign of closeness, a quiet reminder that they feel safest right where your scent is strongest. But over time, that sweet little moment can turn into a kind of ownership, as if your pillow has become their personal sanctuary rather than a shared space. And when a dog begins to believe that spot is theirs, you can sometimes feel it in the way they hesitate to move or give a low, uncertain growl when you shift beside them. That's why offering gentle structure around sleep spaces can ease that possessive edge and bring the comfort back to where it belongs. And look, you can ignore that if you want. Most people do. Number 5, barking at guests due to overattachment. Most people assume barking at guests is just a dog being protective, but it often comes from something far more vulnerable. When your dog treats every visitor like a threat, it's usually because they've tied their sense of safety so tightly to you that anyone new feels like an interruption. And in that moment, the barking isn't about aggression. It's about fear of losing the one person they rely on to make sense of the world. You can almost feel their anxiety rise the moment the doorbell rings, their body tense, their eyes locked on you, as if waiting for confirmation that everything's still okay. That's why calm reassurance and slow, consistent introductions matter more than anything else, because they show your dog that your attention isn't being taken away, just shared. So that wasn't a confidence issue at all. It was something else entirely. Number 6, expecting food during human meals. It's tempting to believe your dog begs at meal times just because the food smells good, but it usually comes from a deeper place. They watch every bite you take with this quiet conviction that they're supposed to be part of that moment, almost as if your meals don't feel complete without them. And it doesn't take long before a tiny piece from your plate becomes a pattern, a signal that reinforces the idea that your food is their food, and patience isn't required. Before you know it, the disappointment on their face when you don't share isn't just about hunger. It's about confusion, because you've accidentally taught them to expect something that isn't good for their body or their mind. That's why giving them their own special snacks or small enrichment activities during your meals creates a soft boundary that still feels loving, reminding them that your time at the table isn't a moment they have to control. And once you make that shift, you'll start noticing how often this same pattern shows up in other parts of the day. Number 7. Overlooking misbehavior. Most people think letting small misbehaviors slide is an act of kindness, but it often leaves your dog feeling more lost than loved. When they choose something they shouldn't or ignore a simple cue, you might choose compassion over correction because their innocence softens you in a way nothing else does. But in that silence, your dog is left trying to guess the rules of a world that suddenly feels unpredictable. And guesswork is a stressful place for a dog to live. You can see it in the way they hesitate, in the way their eyes search your face for direction, unsure if they're doing something wrong or if you simply don't mind. That's why gentle, consistent expectations become a form of emotional safety, helping your dog understand where they stand and what keeps life steady. And once you feel the relief that clarity brings, you start to recognize another pattern that's been waiting in the background. Number 8. Letting the dog lead every walk. You can see this pattern clearly the moment you step outside and your dog surges ahead, as if they've been put in charge of the entire outing. At first, it feels harmless to let them choose the pace, because their excitement is charming, and you don't want to dampen it. But as the minutes pass, you start to feel how much control they think they need to have, tugging you toward every scent, every sound, every curiosity that pulls at their mind. And in that constant forward pull, there's a kind of pressure building in them too. A belief that walking is their responsibility, and you're just there to follow along. That's why blending calm structure with moments of free exploration helps them relax, because it reminds them they don't have to manage the world for both of you. And at first, it doesn't matter. 6 months later, it does. Number 9. Too many toys and overstimulation. You can almost feel the shift the moment a dog has access to every toy they own all at once, as if none of them hold any real meaning anymore. What starts as generosity turns into a quiet kind of overload, where your dog bounces from one thing to the next without ever settling into play that actually satisfies them. And when every toy is available all the time, their excitement fades faster, leaving them restless and unsure of what they're supposed to do with all that energy. You see it in the way they drop one toy mid-chew to grab another, as if something better is always just a few inches away. That's why offering fewer options and bringing toys out with intention can create deeper engagement, helping your dog rediscover focus and joy in the moment. And once you see how quickly they calm with just a little less noise, you start to understand what else might be happening beneath the surface. Number 10. Lack of independent exploration. There's a quiet question hiding in the background when your dog never chooses to explore on their own. You start to notice how closely they stay tucked against your leg, almost as if distance itself feels unsafe or confusing. And while that closeness can feel flattering, it can also signal that your dog hasn't learned how to trust the world without you standing right beside them. Over time, that dependence can make simple moments, like greeting another dog or walking a few steps ahead, feel overwhelming because they've never practiced feeling steady on their own paws. That's why gently encouraging small moments of independence, rewarding curiosity, and allowing space between you can build a confidence that lasts far beyond a single walk. On its own, it's nothing. Stacked over time, it becomes your life. Number 11. Dog dictating daily routines. There's something quietly freeing about realizing that small shifts in your routine can bring both you and your dog a little more balance. You start to notice how often you adjust your timing, your plans, even your mood around what your dog seems to expect, as if their preferences set the tone for the whole day. And while it feels loving in the moment, it slowly teaches your dog that the world should move in the rhythm they choose, leaving them confused or stressed when life inevitably asks for flexibility. You can see it in the way they wait for certain cues, or grow restless when something happens earlier or later than usual. Almost as if the routine itself has become their anchor instead of you. That's why gently weaving in small variations, different walk times, new enrichment, subtle changes, helps them learn that safety isn't tied to a clock, but to the relationship you've built together. And when that understanding settles in, both of you finally get the space to breathe a little easier. Looking back at all these patterns, you can almost feel how much your dog has been trying to communicate without ever using words. And even if a few things surprised you, your presence and your effort have already given them more comfort than they could ever explain. The real shift happens when you start seeing your daily routines as conversations, little exchanges that shape how safe they feel. With that kind of attention, your bond becomes less about managing behavior and more about understanding a heart that depends on you. And once you start thinking that way, a different question begins to emerge. One about what your dog hopes for, not just what they do. There are moments of love they treasure, from puppyhood to old age, and many of them are softer and more heartfelt than people realize. If you want to keep uncovering those quiet truths, you're welcome to join me in the next story.